These commentary and reaction channels will try to blend in with us common individual YouTubers who give mild takes on bad TV shows, where someone in the comments will still take the video way too seriously and genuinely get mad at my opinion on a reality show. You'll see what I mean by blend in.
I'll give Bill Maher an A. Bill Maher is a super nice guy. I really like Bill on a personal level. Also, he's honest enough to acknowledge when the left is just being crazy.
You have become the party of no common sense.
Good answer. Good answer.
Again, there's nobody on this list who I agree with ideologically, so we are relegated to people I disagree with. So Bill gets an A. I'm trying to see if there's anyone else here who I would give an A. Nope. Okay.
Leg Jack, you guys remember that? Remember when Brandon's police brutality reform platform was just shoot him in the leg, Jack? Don't shoot the body. Shoot him in the leg. You just
This are going to make your life better whether you like it or not. You deserve higher wages and to work less hours. How dare you? And they posted this, I guess, as a way of saying, look, see, the left can't meme. But I actually think that's a banging meme. I mean, that's kind of how a lot of the conversations seem to go, particularly in American politics.
Ginger Snap, did you find somebody?
Well, we did find somebody, but then right before you called, they just started a turf protest at Freedom Plaza, so everyone's running to Freedom Plaza to protest turfs.
Hold on. Wait, I thought you meant turf war. You mean a protest of TERFs?
They're all going to go yell at J.K. Rowling, I think, is what they were saying, or something like that.
Hi, everyone. Squish Gang is present, featuring a new, larger member. If they haven't been in a video yet, I don't really remember. And today we're going to do kind of a video essay, but essentially entirely off the cuff of just some stuff that I've been thinking about for a really long time. And there's going to be multiple elements placed into this video. I'll get into that a little bit down the line. Patreon, sources, Amazon wishlist, social medias, links to the books that I will be using, any of that kind of stuff will all be linked down below, along with, if I end up referencing any other channels, we'll see, will be in there as well, along with other resources that I come across. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. I am trying to have the biggest vibe checks of them all. There's going to be multiple parts of this video as per always, and I'll have to section them afterwards because I'm not sure exactly how this is going to end up going. My life has been really hectic and busy lately. I've already edited out tons of stutters, so I'm just trying to kind of gather myself and figure out where I want to position this, and I'll do that at the end. With the recent events in the United States, with the overturn of Roe v. Wade, this precedent set that I want to discuss today has been just ever present, and it's starting to really get to me in a sense of how I analyze rhetoric. So today's video essay is going to be the political agenda of meme culture and the way that social media is utilized, quote unquote, comedically to push a political agenda. So we're going to go through several aspects of this. We're going to have a beginning section where I'm going to describe the delivery of a message, and then I'm going to show you some examples of that via Twitter I'll stream on OBS Labs, and then we'll do a section on the internet's delivery of messaging, and then we will do a how do we approach this from here section. I would imagine something along those lines. Now, let's get right into the video. So beginning with the function of delivering a message, I'm going to be reading from a book called The Elements of Rhetoric. Okay, so this is a kind of essentialist guide to rhetoric in a very simple light. It even says a guide for students, teachers, politicians, and preachers, right? So all different types of people that want to deliver messages. So if we begin, right, there is the aim of a speaker. So everyone who delivers a message is trying to aim to deliver something, right? So since man is rational, any truth you present will please. Man is not, however, merely rational. Truth unadorned is often ignored. Consider how, over the period of a day, one of your listeners may experience 8 hours of work prior to listening to you. Sleep went sour at 5 a.m. last morning. At noon, her arthritis flared. On the way home, she lost her keys. Her husband forgot to heat the chicken. Over supper, she fought with her daughter, and now she must make the effort to put these things aside to listen to you. To serve your audience well, you must please them, if only by being pleasant. Jokes, anecdotes, and brevity add all to delight. Most importantly, though, don't waste people's time. Come comprehend at the end of your promise. Since movements add interest, a tough audience or a younger one may need to see emotions not only on your face, but also in the articulation of your hands. The less educated, the younger, or the less interested your audience, the more you need to work to please them. What we'll see when I go into the kind of reaction example sections, as I'll link to each one of the sections that I have here, I'm going to show you instances of YouTube videos and different, like, right wing in particular kind of ways of delivery, and as well as left wing ways of delivery, to demonstrate the idea of positioning themselves to that less educated audience, but the difference in which they do so, where leftists will kind of be almost driven to overinform and thus in some circumstances push away an audience, while the right will have this overly simplistic and drastically hyperbolic delivery that kind of then conflates this fight or flight reaction in people. And some is driven through like weird forms of comedy. And I want to see, the point of this video is to kind of show you why I believe that such false flag messages and such dense hypocrisy for subjects across the board, whether that be religion, of church and state, the way that pregnancies are terminated, the rights of different people, the way of can we just separate our differences or let's approach this with love, those kind of anecdotes and how they kind of accumulate into this certain way that you can see that there's a level of difference in level of dedication in different political alignments, and the way that there can be seemingly an indoctrination to certain political parties. This can be, for example, there's no MAGA hat Joe Bideners, for example, in the way that there are, or there's no, or I shouldn't say there's no, because I can never say 100% for anything, but even like with the Canadian trucker commune, there is no like standing Trudeau level to the disliking Trudeau level that they are presenting. There seems to be a separation in the amount of dedication between the different political alignments. So that is how this is what this video is aiming to state, right? Because if we go into matching means to an end, this is the next section, it states the following. Once you've established your end, whether you wish to primarily to teach, to please, or move, you can turn to technique. Here enters a complicating factor. You are not the only party involved. To get a complete picture of your talk's objectives, you must broaden your view to include your audience's perspective. After all, if the room were to be empty, why would you open your mouth? To match means to an end, pay respects to what is called the communication triangle. It is a device for clarifying your end, and hence determining your methods or rhetorical techniques, based on observations that go back to Aristotle's rhetoric. And that is always going to be, if you can see, there's a triangle there. I know it's going to be back, or it might be backwards. I don't know. I don't remember how it goes in Vegas. But it's just ethos, pathos, and logos. That's what it always kind of falls down to. Ethos being your kind of reputation of your speaker, pathos being your emotional conversation, and logos being your logic. What will happen is you can have your figure in which you like the delivery. For example, Ben Shapiro, right? Ben Shapiro's ethos it varies greatly depending on who you ask. There are some factors that can be angled as objectivity in his defense. Things like, which these are going to be very surface level, and I know they're going to get a lot of disagreement in the comments, but this is just a way of angling it, right? He went to Harvard. Smart people go to Harvard. He used big words. Big words make smart, right? This channel goes against that notion. I try to, in the most simple way possible, explain things because I want to show you how it's not really as complicated, at least linguistically, that these people try to approach it, because I want to dilute the idea of gatekeeping, critical thinking on your own, because what ends up happening is a lot of people are guided by these quote-unquote objective, logical figures, where Ben Shapiro, literally, he created his ethos, his personality, or his reputation on facts don't care about your feelings.
Facts don't care about your feelings. And let me tell you something, dear. You must have been the facts, because you didn't care about my feelings.
Despite the fact that you can see that he just is one of those people, and I'm going to make this on a t-shirt at some point, I think, that thinks anger isn't an emotion, right? Because he's visceral, and he's frustrated, and he's very, like, seemingly angry very often, but that's not emotional or feelings, right? That's logic, because then he's angrily saying long words in these kind of strings of consciousness that he displays. So that is going to be, that's kind of like your purpose of your speech, right? It's the same way that Hassan, Piker, or Vosh, or those kind of more leftist leaning, very, very mainstream, by the way, because I know what's going to happen is I'm going to get comments of like, well, you forgot these 86 other people that also make content like that. That's not what we're saying. In the meme culture of the internet and in the internet culture delivery of politics, the super mainstream people are the most important. This comes back to a rhetorician named Foucault and a philosopher a lot of people talk about, this kind of idea of the precedents and powerful setting the standard of even knowledge to the base below them. And that is why I'm talking about these types of people and not so much as the kind of more niche followings, because that's not, whether you want to admit it or not, that's not where people are getting their information, at least to the extent that you'd want them to, I guess, for lack of a better term. Because this is another thing that I find is a bit of an issue, is people will have disagreements on a certain character. Let's say Vosh or Hassan or Sam Cedar, right? So Sam Cedar, Vosh, Hassan, right? Because I notice it's a bit more of a leftist notion, and I can explain why that is later. But there's a disagreement on the character of that person and the delivery that they distribute. They thus think that the impact isn't valuable and isn't existent, but yet at the same time have this desire to hold responsibility to them. I talked about this. I'll link it down below. I have a feminist commentary video where I kind of talk about this idea too, where it's like where you're getting it delivered from is really, really important, and that is one of the main aspects of rhetoric and the main aspects of delivery of anything. So next, I'm going to do the section where I'm actually going to show you like online examples and talk about them on screen, and then I'll get into the next section, which will be regarding the actual information distribution of all of it. So first we're going to look at a leftist streamer. So here I have Hassan, right? The infamous guy with car and house. So we're going to talk about too right away. We're going to show, I find Hassan to have the most similar delivery to the right-wing people, and I'll explain why after I show some comparison clips, and I'll explain why I believe this is actually effective to the way that he is delivering his political agenda.
Debunked. The rich don't pay their fair share. I love when Republicans do this shit, by the way, when they like go out to bat for rich people. It's awesome because like I think people are angry. And what Donald Trump at least does very well, even though it's like super threatening, is make it seem like he's on the side of the working poor.
When we ask what it means to be rich, it's easy to roll your eyes. You know, it's the dude with the mansion, the guy with the yacht.
So here we want to state already, right, that Hassan is establishing an antithesis between himself and the characters of the Republicans. When we're looking at media in this way, there is a certain idea of like honor that the Democrats tend to attempt to pursue when they are discussing Republicans. And the thing is that while man might want, and when I say man, I'm talking about everybody in the sense of the way that Aristotle states it, people is what I actually mean. People in general are not as rational as they wish to believe. An emotional response is inevitable to some extent at some point. With this in mind, there's the idea of pleading an emotional reaction and acknowledging the emotional reaction, which Hassan says here with saying that he knows that people are angry. This is kind of making a more purposeful delivery in how he's delivering the message. And Hassan also talks a lot about the idea of like inaction in the mode of the Democrats. And I think Hassan is trying to show the purpose of action and the fallacy of the honorable reaction.
The truth is that the word rich is somewhat vague. A man who owned 1 million shares of Pets.com in February 2000 was rich. At that time, Pets.com stock was worth over $10 a share. By January 2001, he would have been broke. There's a difference between realized wealth and unrealized wealth.
Oh my God, dude. I'm debunking. People with assets that it does not directly fucking liquid cash are technically not rich. Yeah, like for example, this logic extended to its like final conclusion would make it so that Jeff Bezos is not even f***ing rich. Elon Musk is not rich. Like, I guess they're not rich then. Thanks, man. Yeah, because like if Jeff Bezos technically only makes $60,000 a year. He does. Jeff Bezos gets paid $80,000 a year when he was the CEO of Amazon. Technically, he's not rich. Okay, got it, dude. Thanks.
Perhaps we mean the man who owns huge chunks of land.
As we can see here with Hassan and his approach to Ben Shapiro, which we'll look at Ben Shapiro next separately, there's the idea of if you can't beat them, join them with your enemies. And while some may say that that is not the purpose, or that is, oh, we don't want to be as petty as they are, and we don't want to do blah, 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 I think it is worth noting the effectiveness of tapping into people's emotional state and frustrations in this direct fashion, along with debunking in a way that is more clear. Because Ben Shapiro, if you notice, will say things like there's a difference between realized and unrealized wealth, and then not elaborate further, right? Hassan will immediately delve into statistics and weigh the values of the numbers, as well as the process that Ben Shapiro is trying to do, kind of like to how I will break down rhetoric of different things, and how I'm doing that with Hassan right now. So this is a very prominent character in the leftist sphere, yet more so functions as a more contentious character. And I think a main purpose that leads to the flack that he gets is that similarity to the kind of right-wing creator in delivery, not in what he's saying. Those are very different things, and I do not want those to be conflated. But now, because there's lots of other people too, right? Because if you look at Vosh, there's going to be another kind of function of this way. But the thing with Vosh is it's interesting because I feel like he tries to thrive off of his cancelability. Vosh is someone I've never really understood, and I don't watch very often or really at all. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but I'll still evaluate kind of the purpose delivery here as our other
and there were damaged by that is a completely fictitious fragment of your or somebody you know's psyche being projected into this conversation.
This is
if there's a child who's being like told to perform or dance or whatever, I think that can be pretty bad. Or like the idea of like grooming, like when an older person is trying to like come on to a younger person or try to like prepare them for exploitation, that's obviously very bad. But cons use grooming so ubiquitously now that grooming includes like seeing a guy in a dress, and that's just, I mean, you know, that's just very silly. And it goes back to the narrativization thing. You know, if you're afraid of birds, that sounds scary, but that's a you thing, you know?
In this statement, I think I just realized the contention I have with Vosh's delivery, and it's not it's literally a me problem. Before anybody tries to start chirping in the comment section, it's a me problem. He's giving Twitter leftists. In how you see fit to that, you decide. There's this like debate bro energy, and this idea of so-called facing your opponent head on. His linguistic patterns are very complex, however, and his vocabulary is a lot more complicated than Hassan's, just on a structural matter. Now, I want to say that that's fine, but there's going to be a difference in the audience scope for that. And ideas of politics and the way that you need to be kind of memed in order to become popular enough, and kind of have to become a meme to be able to push yourself forward. This kind of delivery is not doesn't seem to have the ability to be orchestrated or enough flair to be a part of a super wide audience. This is the same feeling I have with Sam Cedar, right? It's not fun to watch. And that sounds kind of, I'm about to get doxxed. But there's it's not that it's not fun to watch, but it doesn't have the same feeling of I'm here for you to teach you, I find, than Hassan. Whether you think that he's a bad person or his actions are bad, the mode of delivery is a key component here, because if we look at right-wing creators, that is something that they have on T. They orchestrate things, they have so-called comedy skits. They try to very much make this kind of an event, and whether you want to admit it or not, people are attracted to those events. So if we go to, God forbid, I spelt it wrong, whatever. Look at this. Like, literally look at the thumbnail. He's in a full costume. Like, what is he doing? Right? The fact that that's like the first thing that I'm looking at, I'm like, whoa. The internet is something that is unfathomable to all previous philosophers to the extent that it is now. Because if we get back to Aristotle, right, and I was talking about how the ethos depends on who you ask when you're referring to especially right-wing, well, no, left and right-wing creators, you can see by my intro fade in the Ben Shapiro ranking people, for example, his ethos of Bill Maher, his perception of that ethos, and mine are very, very different. I can talk, if y'all want a video on Bill Maher, I will bully him. But anywho's, so when we're looking at the functions of these things, right? This is a meme. This is memeable. And this is what he's going for. Because ethos has become such a variable thing. While in Greece and Rome, and when they had the rhetoric arenas and all that kind of stuff, you only knew like 100 people in your lifetime, right? You did not have access to 5.66 million people, and that's going to be a huge difference. So now that there are variables in that rhetoric triangle that seem to have not been able to be varied in the past, you are now going to be interacting with things like this.
I can't.
By the way, Tiny Dancer, those lyrics don't make sense at all.
Hold me closer, Tiny Dancer?
Yeah.
The boulevard is not that bad. What?
Yeah, well, I think it is that bad.
Well, I mean, it's not the worst place.
No, it's not the worst place. Be someone handing out tickets for Jesus? I don't know.
It could be. Candle in the wind.
Doesn't it change it for you, too, when he's singing about how much he wants to come home to his lady? And you're like,
well, yeah,
not
that
so
was
much.
Yeah, that's when he had all the models at one time.
Right.
And then he was like, it's enough of that.
You know, they got bored with women.
Nick DiPaolo, what I love is he pulls for reference for like a gay man who people acted as though he wasn't gay. Paul Lynn.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if it was an actor, but Paul Lynn was on Hollywood Squares, and it was like Liberace and Elton John. People didn't know that they were gay back then, or at least, they put the blinders on.
Right, yeah.
But Paul Lynn.
So when we get to this directly, right, there's already been a ton of jokes. I clicked to actually towards the end, if you can see, towards the end of the stream. So this is not even an opening. Now, when I clicked to a random point in Vosh, it was a much more structural. This is something that's going to be very different in how they put. Look at this. That was a random point in the stream. So your memeability affects your delivery. Because Vosh had 400k subs. Hassan has 909,000. This was streamed 5 hours ago. This was yesterday. Right? There's more views here. And I know people are going to be like, you're picking at some weird stuff. But I don't think people understand. This is like, I never thought I would say, look at the value of Steven Crowder in a pimp costume. But, that wasn't on my bingo card for this year. But there are so many variables that I find are ignored on one end. On one end of the political spectrum that the other end of the political spectrum is not ignoring. And I think that's something that I wanted to point out in this essay is the embrace of the meme that the right has.
And this is Clarence Thomas's decision relatively recently in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. And he dropped the metaphorical hammer, saying, the constitutional right to bear arms in public for self-defense is not a second-class right. This is a through line you'll see. Look, he's saying we are all citizens of the United States. He just said that there.
So, the crazy thing is that do you not see how he literally paired a pimp costume with a Supreme Court hearing and court statements? this seamless bridge of absolute hyperbolic drive and delivering a message opens up an element of vulnerability with the audience because they want to hear him out because he is funny. This is why people will this is also a way that people cope with things. This is why people kind of like to make jokes and cope with humor. And I just wanted to instill the idea of this importance when we're talking about characters like this. Because I also want to bring up something unique to this kind of universe, right? Which would be the Leftovers podcast with Ethan Klein and Hassan, right? So this is the most recent one, I think.
The nation, no, the world.
Yeah, so this was streamed 5 days ago as of recording this, right? So you have somebody who was thought to be, or could possibly still thought to be, depending on who you ask, and that's fine, an alt-right character, right? Ethan Klein from the old H3 days, right? Because if we look at his channel from before, which I've had to look up a ton of times for my 2016 videos, if we go back far enough, you're going to have kind of this more, you know, right-wing font, or people who made these types of videos tend to have either exhibited, come out, or been found to be right-wing individuals, like far-right individuals. So this is kind of what's happening with, that's what happens with people's perceptions of Ethan Klein, right? So now you have this guy who was seen to be this right-wing hero, and a lot of right-wing creators will say it. Steven Crowder's mentioned it, the Quarterings mentioned it, etc., right? And then you have him joining forces with one of the more, or if not the most contentious leftist figure online. And this is embracing that memeability to an entire new extent, because also this show features things like sound bites and clips and memes and all of these different things that are supposed to be very lighthearted. And I think it's interesting because I find that the left has a pretty pronounced distaste for this, as it's almost seemingly making a mockery, despite the fact that it functions on the exact model that spreads most right-wing messages and spreads them as vast as they are spread now. And I think this is something that I think kind of needs to be embraced, because I think the idea that everything has to be so serious in how it is delivered actually dilutes its access.
Kayla is so fucked up. He's never been proud of her because it's a sin. He says, listen, I'd like to support you, but it's a sin.
I did not fuck my dog.
What? What the fuck was that,
sus.
Jordan?
That's super suspicious.
That's like the Uvalde Police Department. That's like the Uvalde Police Department being like, we did not shoot any of the kids.
Wait,
Please.
Jordan, did you have more to say?
I did not put my dick anywhere near my dog.
Okay, I got a disclaimer here. That's an AI voice.
Oh my
and
God.
Jordan sued the creator of this, so I need to say explicitly that's not actually Jordan's voice.
So again, you can see that alike to Steven Crowder, I've clicked into a random point in the stream, and you end up actually seeing a serious subject they were talking about before, which was Elliot Page, and right-wing people denying their his gender identity. If I can get back far enough. So, which was Jordan Peterson in this case, of course. A lad, an icon. Shout out to Canada, period. But anyways, so you see that seamless bridge between like memeability of messing with Jordan's voice to this more serious subject and delivery. That is what I wanted this part to show, because the means has to match the end. And it has to be able to get to an end. And I think that's that huge separation, and that's why right-wing content has this like vast explosion, especially post-2016. So now that we've gone through that, okay, we have to go through the actual information aspect, the believability, and the way that the internet has gotten us to where we are now. And in this, we're going to read a really interesting book that I actually really highly recommend to a lot of people, because it's also written how do I in Mika-esque, in Mika font. Obviously, I don't want to take credit for their writing. Of course, it was fantastic, but I'm saying they kind of write this in a way similarly to how I deliver my videos. It's the same kind of conciseness and clarity, and a writing style that I really appreciate. I think I'm just rambling on because it sounds like how I write papers, and I'm not trying to like gas myself up. I just think it's obviously y'all are watching, so you guys like how I do that. So this is called The Death of Expertise, The Campaign Against Established Knowledge and Why It Matters by Tom Nicholas. Okay, so this one we have several sections to go through, but I want to begin with the part that I found to be the most important when discussing the meme kind of direction of the right versus the left, right? So this section begins with being titled, I Unfriend You. And it says, learning new things requires patience and the ability to listen to other people. The internet and social media, however, are making us less social and more confrontational. Online, as in life, people are clustering into small echo chambers, preferring only to talk to those with whom they already agree. The writer Bill Bishop called this the big sort in a 2008 book, noting that Americans now choose to live, work, and socialize more with people like themselves in every way. The same thing happens on the internet. We're not just associating with people more like ourselves, we're actively breaking ties with everyone else, especially on social media. A new 2014 Pew Research study found that liberals are more likely than conservatives to block or unfriend people with who they disagree, but mostly because conservatives already tend to have fewer people with whom they disagree in their online social circles in the first place. So when we look at leftists, a lot of the time we'll say things like, oh, disagreeing on politics, agree to disagree, or things like that, but we are disagreeing on fundamental human rights. That, while I agree with that sentiment, is the notion that they are discussing here with that idea of kind of, because it literally says, liberals were also somewhat more likely to end a friendship over politics in real life. That's the notion that this is discussing. I am neither agreeing nor disagreeing with his ideology. I understand that there is a point of no return and that there is an idea that there is a big difference between passing laws on some simple notions of economic distribution or religious policy to a small degree before it tips into denying fundamental human rights. But overall, the trend is one of ideological segregation enabled by the ability to end a friendship with a click instead of a face-to-face discussion. This unwillingness to hear others out not only makes us all more unpleasant with each other in general, but also makes us less able to think, to argue persuasively, and to accept correction when we're wrong. When we are incapable of sustaining a chain of reasoning past a few mouse clicks, we cannot tolerate even the smallest challenge to our belief or ideas. This is something that I do find very prominent with people who grew up online. I did not grow up online. I grew up with no internet at all, and two parents that my dad was trying to be a lawyer, so it was a lot of argument stuff, a lot of tangents and those types of things. But there is definitely this sentiment of such solid self-assurance in your argument, in just through your gut feeling, where sometimes you have to pull out like a very specific like receipt to be corrected or anything like that. Like I remember people freaking out on Twitter about Hassan's car, and then Hassan having to tweet that it was electric, but then like also they're paying for it and all of this kind of stuff. I'm not trying to be Hassan head. I don't care. Like the thing is like I am very neutral on all leftist figures and less than neutral, definitely not positive towards right-wing internet figures. This is just streaming from because there are obviously like transphobic messages and homophobic and racist and all that kind of, there's like legitimate like attacks on human rights characters in their delivery via social media. So that's where the difference is going to come in. But with leftists, I kind of navigate, with the education that I do have, I tend to I have a different way of navigating things in how I issue my own way of thinking that comes from education, unfortunately, and I don't really know how to make a guide for that. So because I want to highlight biases or assumed biases in this conversation, because when we're talking about leftists and right wing and conservatives, and we're talking about internet, this is a huge precedent that is set, that people do not want to acknowledge their biases and target them head on. That is going to affect this argument a lot, because if you can't acknowledge where you're coming from, that you will be, exactly how this book says, unwilling to be wrong, unwilling to admit to wrong, and unwilling to functionally address an argument in a way that will actually assist both parties. So when we begin with things like the recent ruling with Roe v. Wade, right? There is the conversation of just have men get vasectomies. And there's these conversations of what medical balance to control via the right, quote unquote, the issue with ending pregnancies and ending the lives of children, even though I do not believe that those things are the same. I think that's a fallacy of false equivalencies, but neither here nor there with that. This falls down to the following. This falls into the distrust of professionals and this distrust with, quote unquote, gate-kept knowledge, which would come from things like academia, for example. This says the following. Despite what irritated professionals may think, however, the internet is not the primary cause of challenges to their expertise. Rather, the internet has accelerated the collapse of communication between experts and lay people by offering an apparent shortcut to erudition. It allows people to mimic intellectual accomplishments by indulging in an illusion of expertise provided by the limitless supply of facts. And what's funny about that is people also through the internet, there's become, at least in Canada, an issue of people actually just faking professional certificates in general. So like that, I might just sense if there's a little box over it, it's because you can see my name when it flips. But that's the degree that I have. Right? My actual professional certification, and that's my diploma of college, right? But people have started printing them through the internet, which I think is so interesting that now you have to send all of these like proofs through a registry and all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to add that anecdote in because I think it's interesting that they're saying that you're faking it just through your delivery of knowledge through the internet, but I think it also just happens in real life. Not what to mention that. So here's the most important part, right? Facts, as experts know, are not the same as knowledge or ability. And on the internet, facts are often not even facts. In the various skirmishes in the campaigns against established knowledge, the internet is like artillery support, a constant bombardment of random, disconnected information that rains down on experts and ordinary citizens alike, defending all of us while blowing up attempts at reasonable discussion. And that is where you're going to be getting, this is why you get just so much content, especially from right-wing media machines, right? So you have the Daily Wire, you have InfoWars, you have like these whole groups of people. You have Tim Pool, you have The Quartering, you have Steven Crowder, you have all of these different people that just push out tons and tons of media, multiple uploads a week, obviously Ben Shapiro as well. And then they even try to shape things a little bit differently. There's that girl on the Daily Wire who does content in like a studio with like a microphone, and tons of leftist YouTubers like Ethan is online, and like Hassan reacted to her as well. And there have been quite a few videos on her. She looks like me, which I think is kind of funny. Like we have the same kind of vibe, which when I think about that for too long, am I just like the not inverse, but like the complete like opposite of her? Like we both have our little Yeti well, she has like the podcaster microphone that all the rich people use, but it just makes me laugh because it's like we have the same kind of energy. But so there's these media machines, conglomerates that are developed to be delivering these messages and delivering these notions that they have, because the more you're bombarded, the more you're overwhelmed, the more you won't dig deeper. If you're catered towards a certain direction, even if you are to dig deeper, you won't be exposed to other ideologies outside of their own. So if like that's because of the function of algorithms, which is a whole other argument, right? If I start watching, I've made a couple of videos where it's like ruined my suggested page, like on YouTube, like the homepage. Like when I did my video on iDubbbz's Content Cops, I had to look up a bunch of Leafy content, a bunch of old Keemstar content, my 2016 videos. Now I get a ton of like Vine compilations and old like videos from people, a lot of those kind of 2016 commentators that kind of fell off and never got out of their weird edgelord eras, all these types of things. So the algorithms will cater to a certain information direction. This is for the sake of profitability. This capitalism and how it ties into this is an entirely different video I don't even want to touch on, but essentially, to make the long story short, corporations would rather cater false audience corporations would rather cater false information to you for the sake of you being more likely to continue to watch it for the sake of profitability than kind of keep neutrality for the sake of being able to find your own thought processes and directions, which is an unfortunate fact of life. How many times do I have to say capitalism bad, you know? So this is what I was talking about with the notion of things like sillier arguments like Hassan's car, right? Because what's happening is when you get bombarded with so much frustration, and there obviously are other examples besides Hassan's car. I just can't really think of anything off the top of my head. Like I said, I kind of just did this off the cuff, but I want people to ignore the character that is being discussed. I want people to ignore the ties they think I may or may not have. I am just trying to put a situation in your mind. And if you are furious at the idea of me mentioning Hassan's car as a silly argument, this video might be helpful to sit and think about what ties beyond just what the situation at hand are putting you into this mindset. I'm not saying that mindset is wrong, but it is wrong to be feeling so strongly without an evaluation of those strong feelings. Because of this paragraph right here, which states, finally, and perhaps most disturbingly, the internet is making us meaner, shorter fused, and incapable of conducting discussions where anyone learns anything. The major problem with instantaneous communication is that it's instantaneous. While the internet enables people to talk to each other more than ever before, a distinctly new historical condition, everyone talking immediately to everyone else might not always be such a good idea. Sometimes human beings need to pause and reflect, to give themselves time to absorb information and digest it. Instead, the internet is an arena in which people can react without thinking, and thus in turn they become invested in defending their gut reactions rather than accepting new information or admitting mistake, especially if mistake is pointed out by people with greater learning experience. Now, I even mentioned verbatim the gut reaction. I read a little bit further than I read earlier, so that was I did not even know it was going to say that right at the very end. So these are parameters in which you need to be evaluating when you're looking at these types of things. Is you are gaining this self-certainty via gut reaction. And that is what more predatory sources of delivering media are trying to bet on, which is why you end up with a lot of kind of unscripted content, a lot of seemingly authentic conversations, a lot of debate. Because if you are good at gauging a gut reaction, you will be good at debate. I talked about this kind of idea in my video on like the commentary bros, where it was gauging the kind of gut reaction based on like purposefully contrarian argument. And what I want to do for this example, by feeding off of a gut reaction, is I want to play a conversation that I've seen just in a random Steven Crowder podcast. I just want to show you what I mean. And we're also going to have a fun, cute little time and watch that weird thing from, not PragerU, the other one, the Left Can't Meme show, because I feel like that's also very relevant in this case. And we will get to that. So here I have actually inadvertently stream sniped Steven Crowder's podcast thing. And I want to note something I had right at the beginning. It appears that the chat is disabled. Now, allegedly, maybe perhaps maybe just me, that the reason that this is happening is because of a certain use of words that the certain audience he has likes to use. But alas, that's alleged.
Yeah.
Okay, so I rewatched the other episode, like the one that aired last week or whatever, a few days ago, like previously in this video, right? And that whole introduction was missing. So I also want to, if I get banned or striked while literally viewing a YouTube page, I will be very sad and very angry. But this is what I mean with the idea of kind of gathering. So what I was talking about before, the idea of like echo chambers, right? So right now you have 25,000 people watching a live stream. Now, some people might say that's not a lot given 5.66 million subscribers. It's also a super weird time right now. Like, at least Eastern Standard Time. Because I can't show you my... It is 10:30 in the morning on like a Thursday, or no, not even a Wednesday, right? Yeah, Wednesday. So this is like this is a weird time to stream, and he's still pulling really good numbers because you have to understand, right, that like it's at the same time, like it's everyone who's available right now, and most of it, his whole audience are supposed to be like, lace up your bootstraps for capitalism or whatever. So most of these people are supposedly supposed to have jobs or something, maybe, I don't know. Obviously, it's different time zones and stuff. I would not imagine he has much of an audience outside of the United States, given, like, the United States-centric system that he has. I'd be interested to see his analytics, actually, but obviously, like, I'm gonna... Me doing this on the cultural appropriation intro, I'm gonna end up in, like, a cringe libs or triggered stream, which is fine, because they're literally whining about civil liberties. And he's literally Canadian. Like, I live in the city he's from right now. So, and I genuinely think he moved because the Quebecois are too scary, but, you know, because they will fight him. So let's look at some of the points he's making pretty early on in the stream live, and see kind of where everything's sitting here.
Things that just aren't true. This is how they gin up riots. And then, of course, encourage the riots to continue, as Kamala Harris did. As AOC was on...
So we're already starting with what's called a slippery slope fallacy. He is saying, AOC stated that the issue with the Roe v. Wade overturning, is going to be like a precedent set, and it's going to be huge for women, and thus it's going to encourage and start riots. While this is at like a kind of peaceful protest type environment, conservatives do this a lot. The slippery slope fallacy. This is the same thing as if you teach a kid that they're allowed to be homosexual, they will thus be a groomer. That is a slippery slope fallacy at its best. Some may say leftists try to do so with like QAnon and things like that, but there's a history of doing so, like a history of inciting violence. For example, the current court case is January 6th. One of these has a history, one of these does not. One of these shows a pattern of behavior. Also, leftists are not frequently associated with toting weapons in public, and that's a very big difference.
Go through some of the claims versus the truth of what she made. She's trying to claim that with the Supreme Court, that basically we're looking at overturning the idea that interracial marriage is legal. She even goes as far back as the Emancipation Proclamation and gets some dates wrong. But we'll get to that before she is begged by Mr. Colbert to run for president, which we will address. But this, right now, this is how you inspire the riots. And then, of course, the left, unlike Donald Trump, through their direct words, called people to action with the riots. So my question to you is, do you want AOC to run for president? Okay. Don't just take some time to process it, think it through, because your initial answer of may not be correct.
Of abortion should be returned to the people. What action would you like to see the Congress take?
Yes, Miss West Side Story skirt.
I might not be the first to say this, and I will definitely not be the last, but like, conservative men aren't funny. West Side Story skirt. Bestie, you look like a Tootsie Roll. You look like you saw a blonde white woman at church watching TikToks of that guy that cuts trees, and then you're like, man, I have to get in some of that. That guy pulls women. You know, you gotta be a little bit creative here, bestie. West Side Story skirt doesn't even make sense. If you're gonna pull something, like, can it actually be relevant and interesting? You know? Fight like hell, but you're whining into a microphone about a tiny woman from New York City. You know? Like I said, it's... I'm not funny either, you know? But I'm not gonna claim to be. Regardless, I want to say something about this as well. So this is the way that this book describes the idea of these internet talk shows, right? This is what it states for the following. Not only is there more news, but there's more interactivity with the news. Americans no longer read whatever fits into a set number of newspaper columns, nor do they sit passively in front of a television or and receive a digest of events. Instead, they're asked constantly what they think of the information they're being given, often real time. This is literally in real time. We are on a live stream. Obviously, the little live button's going to be gray because I paused it. Twitter and Facebook are the new tickers, crowdsourced streams of information that break news and spread rumors with equal force. Talk shows and news broadcasts increasingly difficult to distinguish from each other. This is what he's doing. He is attempting to distinguish himself as a news source. That's why he has words like fact or claim or truth. Talk shows and news broadcasts increasingly difficult to distinguish from each other, often ask viewers to weigh in via social media. As we saw earlier, he literally said, can you comment if you think AOC should be president? Increasingly difficult to distinguish from each other, often as viewers with clear assumption that the audience watching has a device nearby. Interactivity is also driving the selection of stories, which can make one yearn for the days of corporate editorial control. When the Dallas Morning News hired a new editor in 2015, it reached out to Mike Wilson, a journalist in the internet news at 538, which specialized in data-driven stories rather than breaking news. And that's kind of what this is going into. So I think this is my favorite paragraph, and then we'll get more into what he's doing, because I also think that the biggest thing that the right will do, especially Ben Shapiro, is they'll use strong terms, or what's referred to in rhetoric as God terms, like truth or fact, in things that are not black and white and lack nuance. We've talked about this time and time and time again. However, people will utilize those types of terms to kind of create an ethos of a professional intellectual, right? So my favorite thing is this fusing of entertainment, news, punditry, and citizen participation is a chaotic mess that does not inform people so much as creates the illusion of being informed. This is also why there's this like strong sense of professionalism in the sets that they make and the production value of these shows. If you can make it look like TV, you know, like this saying, if it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, it's probably a duck. They're kind of trying to do that here, right? If it looks like Colbert Report, well, that was satire. Well, even then, it looks like Colbert Report, to be honest, even the color scheme's the same. If it looks like even like a CNN or Fox News or something like that, I was going to start naming Canadian ones, but that doesn't really fit here. But if you're starting to have these like Canadian or American looking newsrooms as your stream background, you're trying to create the facade of an actual person who delivers news. Just as clicking through endless internet pages makes people think that they're learning new things, watching countless hours of television scrolling through hundreds of headlines is producing lay people who believe erroneously that they understand the news. Worse, their daily interaction with so much media makes them resistant to learning anything that isn't too long entertaining enough. This is what I'm saying when I was talking about Steven Crowder's pimp costume earlier in the video. This is exactly what I'm talking about, because this is a pretty entertaining section. Now let me debunk him really quick because I want to, and then we'll get to the left can't meme, because this guy's boring and not funny and cringe.
really informs a lot, and it gives us lessons here, because this is not the first time that this has happened. In the 1800s, the Supreme Court was taken over by the Confederate South and was starting to rule in ways that limited Abraham Lincoln, for example. In the Dred Scott ruling, they ruled that Black Americans are not and can never be full citizens of the United States.
Okay, so Steven Crowder is trying to... So, it is a fundamental thing in philosophy, and Descartes' philosophy in particular, that the idea that the past doesn't indicate the future necessarily. This is something prominent in the philosophy of science, that experimentation from the past and actions in the past does not necessarily indicate a future. Steven Crowder's trying to imply this, while also trying to say it is the case, literally at the same time. This is what I mean by a blatant manipulation of information, because he's saying that this is nothing like that time, despite that there is a takeover of the court, yet simultaneously kind of leaning into this idea that, like, well, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican and you guys loved him, so thus you must continuously love Republicans, which makes literally no sense. It is very common in North America, at least, like, parties in America, at least Canada and America, I'm not going to speak for Mexico, there was a lot of, like, parties that were one way and then completely reversed. It's the same thing with the Conservatives in Canada that also happened from 1867 to they reformed in the late 20th century, or mid 20th century-ish, kind of like 70s or something like that, 80s maybe. But point is, the new Conservatives and all that kind of stuff, it flips, like, that's fine. The name does not hold the exact same value across 300 years, which is a problem that Conservatives seem to have, of things holding for 300 years, yet at the same time, they want their new fancy gun every year that is under the amendment that was written 300 years ago that didn't have guns like that also said it should be edited every 20 years, allegedly, or something like that. But regardless, that's besides the point.
And what did Abraham Lincoln do? He signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
Wrong.
He ignored the gross overreach and abuse of power. During Franklin Delano Roosevelt's attempt to restore the country during the Great Depression with the Green New Deal. I mean, not the Green New Deal. The New Deal. The New Deal.
Narcissistic slip.
Narcissistic slip.
What we saw was
just a slip of the sociopath.
From the Supreme Court attempting
Whoa!
to prevent
What the hell are you
us from
I can't
believe this is late night.
And Franklin Delano Roosevelt threatened to expand the
Narcissistic slip
And
by
in
adding the
his
word green
adoption
in
of
by
that
accident,
position,
while you're literally
despite
can't
the fact that Congress
let her
didn't do it
talk
at
for
that time,
5
although
seconds
Lincoln
without
did.
jumping in and, like, trying to comment on
the
completely
fear
irrelevant things.
of the court's power being minimized caused them to back off their overreach and abuse of power.
So I know it's pretty tough where I'm going to have to hit you with the truth, because she was nonsensical. But first off, Gerald A., you had a very good point.
I had a couple of points here. I just want to give you a timeline. 1857, Dred Scott decision. 1861, Lincoln takes office. 1863, Emancipation Proclamation. That's why I said wrong. His response to this was not the Emancipation Proclamation. That was to start a war.
Right.
He had other aims in mind. By the way, the 13th and 14th Amendment took care of that ruling. And you know what Lincoln said? He's
Interestingly enough, there's no statement of the purpose of that war. The same reason I think the chance is certain group that they of not cishet white men that they don't like. That's a legend. That's hyperbole on my part for the funsies. This is why literally people like this, I'm literally rubbing tension out of my skull. Are why I don't like saying the word truth as an assertion, right? Because in philosophy, and if you read more than, like, Tucker Carlson's verbal vomit, you learn that the concept of truth is not as concrete, theoretically or in action, as ones may state. There is, even in rhetoric especially, there's a variation on truth, and this is an example of that. And just because a guy puts a nice graphic on, the screen that says truth, that doesn't mean that it's truth is the same thing as the facts don't care about your feelings. They have a feeling or an inclination that there is religiosity should be a point of assertion for law, while religion lacks factual consistency in a ton of its instances. Right? This is just going to be me pointing out hypocrisy. I want to finish this point, let my brain stop rotting, and then I'll get to the left cam memes that's actually fun.
Because you didn't like the decision.
Unfortunately, it wasn't as robust. The back of his head.
No.
Now,
Not very
theater, though.
sturdy.
Yeah.
A large hat, but apparently couldn't fit a little bit of Kevlar.
So back then,
Kevlar didn't exist.
Also, here's another truth that you guys need to know. The
I wanna
ruling
know
in Scott versus Stanford was wrong
If
because it
Steven
removed life
Crowder's
and liberty
skull
without
is indestructible to
process.
bullets
And like Gerald
because
just said,
that's
the
what
13th,
he's
14th
implying.
Amendments protected against
What
it.
are you talking about?
And
Putting
the decision,
Kevlar
by the
in
way,
your
was
hat,
awful.
You
It was
kooky old
overturned.
man.
Just like
Steven
Roe.
Crowder is giving the drunk uncle at Christmas that's racist. Is that just me? Okay, sorry. Why is it buffering like this?
Like Roe. That's what's important to note. It's not legislating from the bench, it's interpreting. And hopefully you're an originalist, a constitutionalist, interpreting the Constitution. It's not creating new rights that don't exist. It's not creating new laws that shouldn't exist constitutionally. That is not the job of the court. And by the way,
Your wife's right to vote is a new right. Your right to this form or your use of this form of income, and that's a new right. There's tons of things that you exercise that are new rights. I just need to think a little bit more. What else did the Americans have that are your rights to literally talk to any person of color pretty much to platform them via something like this. So Candace Owens, for example, that's a new right that didn't exist before. There's, or if you're going to do Christianity, if you want to be an originalist to that extent, you have nylon or leather. What the hell is that? Anyways, cringe regardless. It looks like one of those weird, not weird, one of those goth girl harnesses. Anyways, this is mixed fabrics. That's an original right that you should not have had via Christianity, especially because he's from Montreal, Quebec, I think, or something like that. They're Catholic there. If you're wondering, it's interesting because he exercises himself as a Protestant or fundamentalist while he's from a very Catholic area. And I would assume being from here was raised Catholic. If not, he had in a Protestant minority. So originalism is in itself fallacious, and it's just a kind of straw man argument for the idea of any sort of progression. Because in other countries, I don't like saying Canada's better. I think that's cringe because I don't think we actually are. But I will say we have something called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Okay? I'm about to blow some Americans' minds. Do you see when this was written? Do you see that? 1982? Right? It got updated about 120 years after the original one, right? A complete overhaul. And then it gets pretty frequent edits, or to some extent, and it looks like this. Right? And under this charter, there are multiple protected classes, there are multiple interpretations, equality of rights, official languages, etc., right? And we don't have outright freedom if it infringes on somebody else's. If your supposed rights there thus infringe upon others, that is not your right to do so. While as a quote-unquote originalist or constitutionalist or whatever he said, he's arguing for the infringement of rights on behalf of others, because that is what the Constitution was built on, given it's built on misogyny and slavery. So that's all I'm going to watch before I literally commit scream cry. And now we're going to go to the Left Can't Meme show. I'm not watching it on Parler because I'm not a masochist, because I don't want to. This is via the same thing that Tara used. Tara? I'm French, pardon me. Well, I'm Quebecois, so I say everything funny. This is what Tara used in her video for being able to, this whole video, right, is the politicalization of meme, right? This is why you have a almost $200,000 follower Twitter account dedicated to this opposition, right? We're going to look at this as an idea. Do I want to do this with the January 6th edition? Actually, let's do this one, because I feel like that'd be interesting. I see what he's doing, trying to get me copyrighted immediately. Very, very nice.
My name is Benny Johnson, and welcome to the Left Can't Meme, exclusively here on Parler, where free speech lives every once in...
So I oh, I blew up the mic. I love the immediate irony in this, because exclusively on Parler, where free speech lives, is implying that if it were to exist anywhere else, it would not be able to, and it's literally on Twitter with way, way, way more views. You can't see, but it has like 50,000 views on Twitter, and Parler has like nobody on it.
A millennia, you get a supernova, a star explosion that burns so hot and so bright that you can see it in space, and it warms the very soul of all creatures living. And that moment in the meme economy was last weekend when Joe Biden fell over on
the meme economy.
Oh, I'll buy it. It'll be good for the economy.
I like just woke up when I started watching this stuff. I'm having a really good time. Okay, so old man fall off bike funny. One thing I want to say, old man can't drink water? Not funny? Because weren't they calling people like ableist when Donald Trump couldn't drink water properly? Does nobody remember this? Because it's like the internet, everything exists for like 6 seconds, right? So I will say it's not normal. Call me a scientist or something, but it's not normal to need to boost your cup with your other hand. You don't usually need to give her a sauce, you know? I'm gonna pitch this thing by accident, but okay, back to the show.
One of his many vacation homes, multi-million-dollar properties on the beaches of Delaware, and he was riding his bike when he...
He's using multi-million-dollar property as a talking point, like their simp president wasn't a billionaire with a literal like resort that he hid in when he was losing the election. I think what they don't understand is they want to say wealth bad when they're talking about Democrats because leftists think wealth bad, right? Like we've discussed this before, but it's still fallacious to make that claim in any regard, because if you're implying that wealth bad for Republicans, or you're using it as a talking point to like get at the libs, don't you want them to also believe wealth good so that they can boost your capitalist system? Isn't that not how capitalism works? You want the vastest audience possible?
Collapsed on his bike. He stopped to talk to a few people and he fell right the hell over. That spawned the greatest meme explosion star nova that we've seen in a very long time. Joe Biden fell on his bike. Timber! And the memes fell like gold from the sky. Let's go, ladies and gentlemen. We're on Parler. Memes you can only see on this beautiful platform. Biden, bike back better. Meme review. Joe Biden's new campaign logo. Joe Biden's new campaign logo. No Biden.
So I know this has been iterated tons of times, but if anyone in my audience hasn't seen it yet, okay. So when I was talking about Steven Crowder and like all these other people on the right, like I kept saying they missed the point kind of every single time. This is not a show of bad leftist memes. This is a show of right-wing memes. But Mika, it says the left can't meme. There are no memes from the left in here. What it's supposed to be by design, because the whole point of it is that it is parodying a Twitter account like this one, right? Is that it's supposed to show examples of right-wing people being stupid, right? These are memes made by right-wing people that they think are so satirical in nature, like unironically, that they're showing them here. They literally don't understand their own premise of their opponent. So that's how this whole show is run. It's literally just essentially just a right-wing meme review, but then it's centered as an idea.
Let's go, ladies and gentlemen.
Centered around the idea of just a right-wing meme show, but it's called the Left Can't Meme, which would imply that you need left memes to review. It makes literally no sense. I just want to say, like, how, like, echo chamber, like, this is the precipice of that echo chamber, right? In a show designed to critique leftist humor, they can't even exhibit leftist humor. I kind of wonder if that's a fear that they'll be, like, funnier than them or something. I'm not really sure, but it's weird.
The bicycle,
right? It's getting weird.
Memes there. Ground, Biden, bicycle. Joe Biden wants to be on the ground. Joe Biden falling from the Air Force One steps with the bicycle, a classic. Joe Biden falling out of the vehicle. It's very, very good meme format. Joe Biden is a bubble boy.
White guy with glasses looking at a computer. Sorry. Oh my god, I'm chronically ill. Sorry. Anyways. White guy looking at computer with vaporwave background and right forge microphone. That's exactly what he's doing. He's literally just like it's so bizarre to me. He's just narrating the memes. Is that not showing you how like inept these people are supposed to be at interpreting humor? And also, you're gonna see this thing. I don't call a person a thing, but I meant like the idea of like this image, like tons and tons of times because they can't get past 2016. I also want to note vaporwave, like this. If you go back to like my 2016 video, I talk about Leafy and stuff. It was a huge kind of like trend in like commentary and stuff like that in like 2016. Pyrocynical's old outros too, that was vaporwave with this kind of like color scheme. So it's kind of interesting that the structure is following similarly to the
blades, much like Hunter Biden hits the pipe. Joe Biden falling over because Donald Trump.
Bro. Okay. Oh my god. I'm not laughing because that's funny. I'm laughing because of shock, kind of. That's like the fact that that's the first actual joke. But
Donald Trump memes that have spawned up here, by the way, are a totally different subsection of meme. Spectacular Donald Trump teaching Joe Biden to ride his bike, and Donald Trump riding his own bike down the street in spectacular fashion. The Time magazine cover of...
Oh, I would challenge Donald Trump to ride a bicycle. You mean the guy that ordered like 60 Big Macs to the White House? You're gonna tell me he could ride a bike? In his like ripe age of like 3,000? Like he was like, you know, helping put animals on like Noah's Ark, right? Like all of these people are just too damn old. Like including Bo Jiden over here. Like this bitch also too old. That's the thing with America that confuses me is like, why is everyone 90? But that's besides the point.
Joe Biden dancing on a pole for the Democrats throwing money at him. It's kind of accurate. Joe Biden being knocked down in the boxing ring. Joe Biden.
What's interesting is I kind of feel like that was a leftist meme. I'd be interested if someone knows where that came from. Because that seems more like a left-wing talking point, especially because Republicans love fundraising. But, like, if someone knows where that is, and I have a feeling that was actually a leftist meme because, like, especially, like, the Democrats will, like, hog onto any donation they possibly can.
This is Joe. I fell off my bike and I can't get up. The ambulance is on its way.
I'm notifying your doctor and your next-door neighbor, Joe. And don't worry, I'll stay right here with you until help arrives.
For a free.
Okay, I gotta do it to him. Okay, I'm so tired of this, like, he's old stuff. Y'all old as shit. All y'all old as shit. It makes literally no sense. Look at this. Age of members, 117th Congress. Don Young, Republican, 87 years old. This bitch was born before World War II. And he's running something in the country. 1933. This man was born 5 years after bread. Like after sliced bread was invented. Man's probably had an older sibling like the same age as sliced bread. I don't understand this, like, they're old thing. It's like all y'all crypt keepers. Like, I don't get it. Like, okay. This is derailed, but, you know, my videos always do.
Biden being handed a My Pillow by Mike Lindell. How it started.
Don't they like him? What social media is that? Parlor? Was that not My Pillow guy? Was he not in that, or was that something else? Or was that like the super bad? There's another one there that's like really full of like neo-Nazis. Oh my god. I'm also, obviously, I've clipped out when I'm not saying anything because this is actually just really boring, which I didn't expect. It's just like the Gabby Hanna podcast all over again, where like I'm just bored. I just feel like it doesn't really make sense to be like this. Like, Joe Biden old? Yes. Trump also old as shit. Mitch McCussy also old as fuck. Like, I don't understand the argument here. Like, they're saying that he's not able, whatever, able mind, able body. Sure, that's fine, I guess. I'm sure the guy who's 78 eating Big Macs every day also probably isn't of best shape either. Like, I don't understand. Like, the argument should be like, nobody should be old. Or not, that's not what I'm saying. Oh, jeez. Nobody, like, in power should be this old. There should be, like, a required retirement age, like 75 or something like that, right? Especially because presidential terms are 4 years long. Like, imagine you have to find a new president because the other one just, like, had a heart attack because they were so old. Like, is that not concerning to people? Because that's what I was saying when, like, both of them were running. I was like, they're both so old that, like, there should be a legitimate fear that one of them may pass in their I don't want to say service, but their stay in office.
Donald Trump posting on Truth Social this meme to end our show. Trump responding in meme format to Joe falling off the bike. I mean, we're glad he's okay.
I know I was talking about the idea of embracing the meme. I do feel like there should be a point of some sort of professionalism when you have the nuke button. Or you had the nuke button. You know? Like, that's so stupid. I can't imagine, like, Justin Trudeau, like, posting a meme on a social media he invented that can't criticize him under the guise of free speech, except when it's criticizing him, to post a meme about how great he is and how he could, like, if you're so certain that you could take out Bo Biden, why don't y'all, like, box or something? Because isn't that, like, what YouTubers do? Like, that's the extent, like, that's what you're going for at this point, right? Like, as far as your seriousness towards
He's done to this nation. He's collapsed the border. He's collapsed our dollar. He's collapsed the crypto markets, and Joe Biden has collapsed. What it means
I don't
to
understand
take
the
into
argument
assessment
of Joe
his own
Biden
personal health.
collapsed
We know
the
that he's
crypto
falling over because
market
he's not right in the head. and
because,
maybe Joe Biden
like,
will just
it's an unregulated market. That's literally the entire point. What's the president supposed to do? If he regulated the market,
simply resign and save the rest of us
then
from the crash that is his presidency.
That's not the
See you
design of
next
the
week
crypto market.
on The Left Can't Meme.
And they're saying they want Joe Biden to resign, then it's going to be Kamala Harris, who they hate more because she's a minority. Like, if we're going to be honest here, if we're going to be blatant, right? Like, do they not realize that if Joe Biden resigns, it's Kamala Harris? Like, they think that that would magically make not, like, do they think that, like, if Joe Biden resigns, like, Trump becomes president? Because that's, like, literally not how that works. I don't live in America, and I know that. But anyways, that's the end of this section of the video. I have so much footage to edit. Yeehaw. Having a good time. See you in the conclusion. To conclude, I think we just need to evaluate where we're sitting when we're processing information, and we're even viewing things like memes and tweets and kind of just internet interactions, right? Because the idea of pursuing these things as elements of comedy is somewhat detrimental in the way that it can lighten serious topics into a kind of ploy of gut reaction. This is why so many people get angry with, you know, soft leftists when they make quote unquote edgy jokes that are just harming people. That's because the idea that is if it's wrapped in humor, it is no longer has any source of malice. This is where you get what's called semantic purity, which is the idea that, oh, you can take the power away from language, which by the structure and function of language is actually kind of not possible. And I talked about that in my watching all of the Content Cops video, which if I don't tag below is just on my page. So, because you have to think about it like this too, right? So let's say as of right now, I believe that there is 11,000 of you that are subscribed to this channel. I will check literally right now. You can hear my mouse clicking. So right now I have 11,216 subscribers. Okay, as of recording this. It is, before this time, impossible to even be truly aware of that many people in a lifetime. Or at least at once, right? So that's going to be a function of the way that the internet can have these things explode. Because if someone is funny enough, if someone has a powerful enough ethos and a powerful enough delivery and a reach of even just 11,000 people, these things can spew beyond simply that small subset, right? 11,000 people can reach another 100 people each easily. And then within that 11,000, there might be a couple of people who have another 11,000. You know, there are a couple people that are subscribed to me that have large channels. If even we just think of the last video on this channel, which was with Anna Marie Forcino, she has 200,000 subs, right? So if someone who watches me, or if Anna Marie wants to deliver one of my messages with access to 11,000, hers will now have access to 200,000. So just between the two of us, we have access to 211,000 people approximately on a given day, which is a lot, which is many, right? So that's just an example of the way that these things can pass. My advice as someone who has studied argumentation media and political delivery and legal delivery through rhetoric, philosophy, English, the like, would be to, when you have a feeling about something, like a gut reaction about something, or you're very furious reading a tweet, or you're very furious on a figure that even politically aligns with you, to evaluate where that feeling is coming from and kind of break down the chain until you hit the source. Why are you so upset? Were you so upset because a leftist that you also like dislikes that person? Or are you upset because of a strain of actual political opinions that you think are harmful? But do you think they're harmful because someone told you they're harmful, or are they against notions that you truly believe? This goes for right-wing people as well. When someone is telling you that a message that you're delivering is against their fundamental rights, think about if you did not have access to a similar set of rights. If we go back to Roe versus Wade, if a child was born and a father was forced to take care of it for life, or there was a forced if there was some way, like a law to generate, like you had to be together forever kind of thing, given that the kid was born under a state where you're not allowed to terminate a pregnancy, for example. In consensual circumstances. I don't even want to mention the other circumstances because I can't even get into that. And I'm not from the United States. I live in Canada. I literally this is a Montreal university. So that's something that also kind of ties in that I don't really have the nuance at this point in time to describe. But if someone is stating that it's against a fundamental notion for people, think about a similar one that you have access to. Similar right that you have access to. This can go to marriage, relationships, religious freedoms, and evaluate where your frustration is truly coming from. Are you frustrated by your life being faltered or your life being fiddled with under the notion of that religion's existence? Or is it supposedly imposing on your ability to exercise your religious right? Those are two very different things. One of them has something to do with you and one of them does not. That's all I'll say about that, right? But to conclude, that is the video. A little bit messy, but it'd be like that sometimes. Anyways, you guys have a great day, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.
It's just one flop, not a flop era. And sometimes, after the hardest flop, comes the biggest slay.